this. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Last week I mentioned an arrest that we had made regarding gang activity in and around SD61 schools, and today we're ready to release more details about the arrest and Project Halo. Project Halo continues to be an ongoing covert investigation by our Strike Force unit targeting known and suspected gang-affiliated persons in Greater Victoria. Gang activity in the Greater Victoria area has increased, and the primary target is this activity is our youth. Officers have observed suspects selling vape products and interacting with students on and near school properties in and around the Greater Victoria area. Through intel gathering, crime analysts and investigators have been able to observe and identify some of the tactics used by gang members and their affiliates to target and train youth and young adults into organized crime. In January, Strike Force arrested a man with known associations to the BC gang conflict after he was observed selling vape products to students just outside school property. He was observed at or near several schools, including Esquimalt High School, Reynolds Secondary School, and was also observed interacting with youth on the property of North Saanich Middle School after school hours. The items seized from the suspect include more than 1,300 vape products, drugs, imitation firearms, knives, masks, and brass knuckles. The threat is real, and it is here. You can now see just some of the weapons and tools that are being used to threaten and commit violence in order to recruit or retain youth in criminal activity. I'm proud of the work of our Strike Force team in gathering intelligence and building evidence in order to make an arrest. This is not an easy task when we are on the outside looking in. But our team is dedicated to taking action on gang activity and making sure that our schools remain safe for all students. Parents, police, and educators are working together in how we're going to keep our kids safe. This arrest and the work leading up to it is how we are going to be taking action to keep our kids safe in Greater Victoria. We are doing our part through enforcement and by educating parents to attend our gang information seminars, which I've commented on before. We've had over 600 parents that have attended the gang information seminars, which resonates really and shows how challenging the problem is within our schools and the concern that this is having on parents. And we're going to continue this important work. This is just one person of many that we have observed, and our message to those who are targeting our youth is you are not welcome in our schools. We see you, we are watching for you, and we will be coming for you. I'm happy to take any questions that you have. Thank you.
On the outside looking in refers to the fact that the school liaison program you want appears to be a non-starter for the board. They issued that statement Friday. There wasn't a lot definitive in it, but what did you take from that statement?
Yeah, I have seen the letter that they sent to all the parents in SD61, and I can tell you that the call for action really is now. I made my views made quite clear last week on this topic. Now is not a time for bantering and going back and forth on issues. We have a escalating situation in our schools for our students. I think what's really important, in addition to the gang activity and the rise that we're seeing in violence and intimidation and extortion, is the school liaison officers are there to build positive relationships with students. It not only helps with prevention, but it also helps building that rapport and that support network that many students need. So if students, by chance, because many of the students are naive and they don't really realize what they've gotten themselves into, when students find themselves in some of these situations, having a school police liaison officer with whom you have a positive relationship can really help bridge that gap to seek help and support well before students perhaps might find themselves entrenched with these street gangs.
That statement referred to potential gang activity, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but
Yeah.
potential means possible but not necessarily actual.
Yeah.
Do you take that as downgrading the threat that you've been warning about? Or?
Yeah, I just think, again, now is not the time to really be talking about what may or may not happen. From the Victoria Police Department, the observations that we have seen on one gang member that's affiliated to gangs, and these gangs are tied into the Lower Mainland, who are a part of the BC gang conflict. This is extremely serious of what we're talking about, and I'm looking for leadership from the school board and the district, and I'm looking for dialogue and discussion. Let's help the police do our job, work with the school community and get a handle on this, and making sure that we are supporting students in the schools, on the playgrounds, and outside of school property, and building those positive relationships. So that to me is a key. But I've also said, when I presented to the board last week, was I'm open to forming a committee that involves students and PAC reps and parents and teachers and administrators and police to really talk and address about the concerns that have been raised about some students feeling traumatized with police being in schools. So it's not just one or the other. I'm recognizing some of those voices, and I think that there's work that needs to be done, and I'm willing to come to the table. But the time now is not to argue. The time now is not to delay. The time is to work with your local police departments and get the job done with what we're seeing. And much of this stuff is schools are like community. What you see that's happening in community is happening in our schools and on the playgrounds and on school property. So I think it's really important to acknowledge. It would be extremely naive to think that what happens in the community, whether it's with youth or otherwise, is not carrying itself onto school grounds and into our schools. It would be an extremely naive position. And I think we need to just be realistic of what we're seeing and what supports that the police are looking for.
In regards to that letter, did you take that to mean that the board and the district is satisfied with the current protocols in light of what you've said?
Yeah, I was disappointed with the letter. There's no doubt about that. I am looking for dialogue and discussion and working with the Board of Education on this. I think that I'm not sure if they see the immediacy and the seriousness of this challenge and the problem. Parents are now starting to speak out. I wish I had more parents willing to speak out. Many of the parents have moved out of district. Many of the parents, in order to keep their children safe, have been extorted, and they paid sums of money to organized criminals, and they don't know how to get out from this. And these are real problems that we're seeing. And they're impacting many schools in the Greater Victoria area. They're not isolated just to one school, but we're now seeing in-reach to middle schools now as well. There's an advantage for gang members to recruit young and to get as many people as they can and get them hooked into organized crime activities.
Mm-hmm. And they also mentioned in the letter funding, and that it's not the job of the...
Right.
Is there any confusion there after reading that? I mean, is it allotted in the budget already, funding for this program? How's it work?
Yeah. Well, this is the challenge that I have is we are not looking for any funding from our municipal councils. We're not looking for any funding from the school district. We have police officers that we would have reassigned to work in our schools. The police's main responsibility is crime prevention and supporting public safety. And so when we're seeing trends and an increased escalation in violence, we have a responsibility as a police department to keep all members of our community safe on school property and off school property. So this is not a funding issue. And to make it into a funding issue is naive, and it's not incorrect. It's just misleading the public or parents. We have the resources to do this. We want to work with the district in how we are moving ahead, but now is really not the time to bicker. Then it's really a time for action.
Can you say why those officers weren't brought back from your standpoint earlier then? Because I think yours have been out of duty since 2018 when you redeployed them.
Yes.
But the decision by the school board was only last May.
Yes. Yeah. So it's really important to note this, that in 2018, I did, out of necessity, reassign the school officers to frontline duties to answer 911 calls. That was not done lightly, and it certainly wasn't done because they weren't adding value working in schools. But I think what's important to remember, and what is getting lost in some of the narratives, is that the Victoria Police Department had police resource still connected to the schools. It wasn't the official school liaison program, but we had our community resource officers in and out of the schools on a regular basis. So that contact, that connection, that relationship building, myself included, having gone to George J. and Central Middle School, I was regularly going to those schools and being invited to go to those schools. So we still had those relationships that did exist, but as of the decision on May 2023 from the school district, we are no longer welcome and allowed to come into schools unless we're investigating a criminal unless there's a criminal investigation, or unless we are working on a lockdown drill. So there are significant restrictions of the role of police and why we're allowed on school property. And that's a barrier. That is a challenge. And certainly it's very difficult to target this and support students when we are literally on the outside looking in. It's not a place where parents want to be. It's not a place where students want to be. And we need to step up and do the right thing and support student safety.
Given that you've re-emphasized the seriousness of this issue, I guess can you talk a little bit about why we haven't heard about it until that meeting last week, when that was almost a month since the arrest happened?
Right. Well, I have been advocating significantly, even publicly, letting the school board know that we are seeing gang activity in and around our schools. This is not my first time talking about it. It was important that I address the school board on this, on some of the challenges and the issues. The earliest opportunity that I had to do that was at the February board meeting.
You can't even send a letter to the school district saying that this activity is going on?
Well, those discussions are happening ongoing. There's no doubt. Those discussions with teachers, counselors, school administrators are happening, and we're making them aware. I was led to believe that the School District 61 Board of Education was unaware maybe of the magnitude of what we're seeing in the in-reach of gang activity, and it was important for me to formally present to them at their February board meeting.
But you confirm you got in touch about this issue before?
This is something that our police officers work with different schools on a regular basis. And again, I've publicly spoken about this.
You're using ominous language. The threat is real. The threat is here. Saying that this is the greatest, organized crime threat right now that you're facing. I mean, we're seeing recently major busts of gang clubhouses in the region. They're breaking up drug trafficking. I mean, there's violence against adults and other things. I mean, major drug activity in the region. Is it disingenuous to say that this is the greatest threat organized crime has on the South Island right now when that's occurring, or is this a little bit of kind of politicking with the school board?
Well, I think what's important to note is this is about student safety, this is about youth, and this is about the level and determination and aggressiveness of in-reach that we are seeing in our schools. This is unprecedented that we are seeing street gangs that are actively and aggressively recruiting students, many times naively recruiting them so they owe a debt. And once you owe a debt, you're down a dangerous path of which parents are now sometimes having to be extorted into trying to keep their kids safe. So I think that it's important for us to keep our youth safe, support public safety, and when we see this level of aggressiveness from gang members into our schools to recruit gangs who then are asked to recruit other fellow students and youth, it's important to highlight this important issue and make sure we're working with the district, parents, and all service providers in making sure that we're supporting student safety.
You're highlighting this blackmail scenario where parents may have to bail out a child, pay to get them out. Can you give us some, how many times are you guys aware this has occurred? And you're saying that is happening and has happened on the South Island.
That's
How
correct.
Recently, give us some details.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm not going to get into the details for some privacy concerns,
Of course,
but I can let
how
you know.
recently?
I can let you know that these situations and parents have reached out to me. We are aware of it. Parents are, in many cases, are ashamed. Parents are fearful for their safety. So they don't want to stand here and comment on camera, even if their anonymity is protected. The fact is, some families have paid thousands and thousands of dollars to gang members to buy the safety of their children that are in schools. That has happened. We know that parents have left the district because they saw no way out of their child being unknowingly recruited into gang activity, and that debt not being able to be paid. And so we do know that, and we have shared some of those concerns, again, with the district, and we're doing everything that we can. So when we are seeing this level of inreach and aggressiveness and violence, we have to do something, and that's what Project Halo is about. This is an ongoing investigation. So, we made one arrest. There's many other things that we're observing, and you can see from the weapons, the disguises, the vape pens, the drugs that you're seeing that are going in and out of our schools. It's troubling and it's concerning, and I think every parent needs to be having these discussions with their children about making sure that they're kept safe.
Is this blackmail scenario you're talking about, is this part of this unprecedented wave you're talking about recently? And when did you see this unprecedented wave begin?
Right. I think,
how recently?
Yeah. I think what we're seeing is an escalation. There's no doubt youth sometimes that perhaps are high-risk youth, vulnerable youth, or exploited youth have been targeted in the past. That's what our work is being done with our mobile youth services team. So we have a youth counselor working with a police officer. They go in and out of schools on a regular basis. What we're seeing is a trend where this is now becoming far more aggressive, far more prominent, which is why we are speaking to parents, holding information sessions, and highlighting the fact that we need to all work together to do more than what we have done. This is not just a blip. This is not just a one-off. We're starting to see an escalating trend that is extremely disturbing to student safety.
Are you starting to collect data on this? We asked you last week for statistics. I mean, you're saying this is rising there, it's increasing.
Yes.
Is there data to back that up?
Yes.
Are you starting to track this now?
Well, I can tell you, somebody who is born and raised here in Victoria and a parent, I've also worked in the school police liaison program. I can tell you that I would not be standing up here today if I didn't believe that this was a public safety concern. I would not be standing up here today
Believe in data, though. Are you guys tracking it?
Well, the challenge with the data is that it's difficult to obtain because many of the parents are not reporting. We have so much underreporting going on. We're not in our schools. If we're in our schools, that would help build those relationships of trust, which are so important to build, to talk about prevention and to talk about some of the inreach. So the data that we do have, we're seeing an increase. There's no doubt about it. Parents are also disclosing to us about what they have experienced, what their children have experienced. Much of this has gone unreported. So I think that we have to be careful about not just relying on the data, but also looking at lived experience of students and parents and work collaboratively together on this important issue.
Can you clarify how Project Halo works? Because I understand that you want to build evidence, but if, like you said, your officers are the one that's observing this activity happen, at what point do your officers hold off and keep observing to build a case versus stepping in if they see something dangerous or some adult who, like you say, is affiliated with gangs is speaking to kids on school grounds?
Right. Yeah. So I don't want to get into too much detail on the investigative steps that our team is taking. It suffice to say, though, that during our observations, we're monitoring the situation. We're knowing and learning who's involved. So there's a lot of intelligence gathering. How widespread is this issue? What schools are involved? What students are involved? How much inreach many of these street gangs have is key and critical. If we were to see something that was extremely unsafe, somebody waving a handgun, whether it's an imitation or real handgun, or public safety was being compromised during the course of the investigation, I can assure you that our officers would probably move right away and to restore safety in that immediate instance, despite that maybe compromising a longer-term investigation. So those observations are being met. We're working with all of our local police agencies on this, but this is, again, an important issue that needs to be addressed now. We can't keep talking about this and address this in September. We need to make sure that we're supporting our student safety right now.
Do you think that explanation is good enough for a parent who, if they knew these conversations were happening and a police officer was just down the street, they would probably want someone to step in that situation? No?
Yeah. Again, these are the discussions we're having with parents around gang prevention and making sure that we're doing it. We work within the court system and with the BC Prosecution Service. If we're going to be able to lay charges and recommend charges to Crown Counsel, we need to make sure we gather the right evidence. So in the right circumstances, that is what we are going to do to hold these gang associates and these individuals linked to organized crime accountable for their actions through the criminal courts.
Has this individual been arrested, or the arrested one, has he been charged yet?
I don't have the details on that, so I'll have to get the details on that. And I know that the individual is no longer currently in custody, but you can see, again, from the level of violence involved, what the situation really, it just is a scope of the situation is pretty evident to the severity of what we're seeing in our schools. And I think it just provides a little bit more context to what I've been talking about and what we're seeing.
You guys pulled your officers out. I mean, the genesis of this is clear. You guys pulled your officers out. Obviously, districts were making their own decisions and things changed. Officers out in the schools, and now we're here.
Yes.
Are you worried as the chief of police that the fox is kind of in the henhouse now? I mean, that dialing this back at this point is going to be difficult. Is the advantage in your mind now in organized crime hands?
I think that getting police into schools to build those positive relationships, work more closely with teachers, counselors, and other school support staff is key and critical. I think the relationships will help stabilize the situation, and it will help build trusting relationships and give parents confidence and students that if they're compromised or find themselves in a compromised situation, they have somebody to turn to, somebody as a resource that they can turn to for help well before they get entrenched. So it's never too late.
What if they say no?
Pardon me?
What if the districts come back and say we're not interested in having police officers back?
Well, then we will continue to do everything that we can to support student safety from the outside looking in.
Are you worried that this will continue to escalate if it doesn't?
There's I mean, I've got reason to believe that it will continue to escalate. If the police aren't there and there's really no oversight in the situation that we have today, chances are that it's probably not going to get better. It's extremely difficult when we have one hand tied behind our back and we are trying to help support students and work with teachers on safety, but yet we're not really allowed on school grounds, unless, again, it's for a criminal investigation or a lockdown drill.
Are you encouraged at all that the conversation's happening at the at the provincial level? David Eby was asked about it today. He said that police presence is merited on school property and with these programs, but it differs, of course, from district to district.
Right.
And today in Chamber, the opposition said that it needs to be mandatory province-wide that these programs be instituted. Is this heartening to you at all?
Yeah, it's refreshing to hear that. I would welcome that. I know that our MLAs from Victoria, Saanich, Oak Bay, and View Royal are all in support of the School Police Liaison program. They see the benefits of this program. And I think that my request has been fair. It's been fair and reasonable. For over 2 years, there's been a review committee that has been looking at the School Police Liaison program. There was a survey done with over 3,400 students, parents responding to it, which supported the continuance of the School Police Liaison program. Unfortunately, because it didn't really align with the school district's views, that survey was not really highlighted and it was buried. That's disturbing to me. So to see our provincial MLAs and some support from the provincial government on this important issue, I think is timely, and I welcome that. But as I said, I am willing to look at the recommendations. There's a page and a half of recommendations from this review committee. So much of the work and heavy lifting has already been done. Let's look at what those recommendations were. Let's be thoughtful about them, and let's look at reimagining and modernizing the program. While we do that, we just need to be in the schools building those relationships now, but I'm committed to doing the second part, which I also think is important to do.
Can you say what day the arrested individual was arrested on?
It was in January, and I think that we're, just for some investigative steps that we're taking, we're not really releasing the exact date at this point, but we may release that in the future. But as I said, this is an ongoing project that we currently have, and we want to make sure that we maintain some level of kind of confidentiality in some of these issues. So thank you. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Sorry to keep you guys